The system was broken. The system has been broken since 2007, 2008, and we're into the biggest recession ever right now, and they're blaming it all on COVID-19, but that's not true. See, if the central banks start issuing central bank digital money, they will have total control over the banking system and over every one of us. The most important thing right now is to make people understand how this financial system works, because 99% of the people do not know how money is created. They do not know how central banks function.
All the views and opinions expressed in this video are my own personal views and in no way reflect the views or opinions of pinterpolitic.com. Okay.
Right, I'm speaking to Ernst Wolff, financial writer, author and journalist, about his book, The Financial Tsunami. Welcome to Pinterpolitic, Ernst.
How did I get into that? That was 50 years ago. I was a student in the United States and I wrote several articles against the Vietnam War, and I was expelled from the country. So that way I started thinking about the system and I got into the economic background of the system.
Right, so what inspired you to write The Financial Tsunami?
Well, the things that went on during the past 20 years, because the financial system is very important for us because see, our standard of living, our health system, our educational system, our pension schemes, all that depends on the financial system. And this financial system is broken, so our future doesn't look too bright at the moment.
So looking at today and what you've written, how do you see the COVID-19 lockdowns and the subsequent repression of all the economies? How is that going to feed into what you've written? How does that relate to everyday people in every day? How are we going to see that materialize?
Going through is the COVID-19 crisis in the economy, but that's not true. The system was broken. The system has been broken since 2007, 2008. It has been artificially propped up, and we're into the biggest recession ever right now, and they're blaming it all on COVID-19, but that's not true. It doesn't have anything to do with it. They even started the lockdown after the recession set in. So they only wanted a scapegoat for what was happening in the financial sector. And also we've seen the biggest gain of wealth for billionaires ever in this year. Like the American billionaires, for example, they've gained about $1 trillion since April.
Yes, I've done a video on it. I did one about Bezos, and we worked out that from March to September, he effectively made 400 million a day.
It's absolutely incredible.
Well, it's obscene, I think, to be honest.
It is obscene, yes.
No single human being needs that money. They also did a thing about as you said, the 12 wealthiest billionaires. Their combined wealth is the GDP of Austria and Belgium.
Incredible.
Which too much power is the problem.
It is. And the system is built like that, so we will see an even bigger concentration in power in the next months. So, but you can only hope for people to get up and stop this financial craziness.
Do you think that what they're doing now is basically consolidating the wealth under the scapegoat of COVID-19 before the economy crashes?
That's what they're doing, right? Yes, and what they're trying to introduce is their central bank digital money, and that will be like the worst dictatorship of the rich over the rest of the population ever.
Could you explain a bit about that?
Yes.
So how would that work? Because some people are very skeptical about that. They think that, China's just digital and I walk around going beep, beep, beep with my phone and it's all very nice. But explain to people why that's not a good thing, not to have any fiat currencies, not to have any physical money. Why it's not a good thing.
See, if the central banks start issuing central bank digital money, they will have total control over the banking system and over every one of us, because they will know wherever we go, whatever we buy, and they will be able to extract taxes from our digital account and we will face a time in which we will have money with an expiration date. They can even give us money like they're probably planning on putting out helicopter money, and that helicopter money might have an expiration date, so that they will tell you you will get $1,000 this month, but you will have to spend them until the 30th of this month. So that's something very new, and that means that they have total control over us, over every citizen.
Wow, it's not a very pleasant scenario. So tell us a little bit about the financial tsunami. What's the basic tenets of the book? What is it addressing? All these issues right now.
Well, see, a tsunami is a series of earthquakes and volcanic eruptions under the sea. And if you take a look at the financial system, that's just exactly what's happening there. We had down of the system in 1998, and then it was saved by several banks that got together and paid, altogether they paid $4 billion to save the system. Then we had the next crash in 2007, 2008, and that time the banks were not able to save the system, so the governments had to move in, and the central banks, and they saved the system with billions and billions of dollars. And now this year in March, April, we had the third big breakdown, and they had to inject trillions of dollars into the system in order to keep it alive. So the system is like a patient in intensive care that needs ever bigger doses of dope in order to survive. And also we're facing a new situation because the central banks, they have two possibilities of interfering in the financial system. They can print money and they can lower the interest rates. And the interest rates have been lowered for 12 years now, and they're at zero now. So they don't have that means to stabilize the financial system anymore. And in the future, they will only be able to print more money. And in order to control that, they are trying to introduce central banking digital money in order to control the whole process of money creation.
So for an average citizen, for an average person with money held in a bank, how is this oncoming tsunami, how is it going to affect them? How in their day-to-day life will they see this materialize so they could actually notice something? Because most people aren't dealing with the stock exchange. Most people just go along, happily with their daily life, or try to, until this COVID nonsense. How are they going to see that actually start to manifest in their daily living?
Well, probably through the process of inflation, because the more money you print, the less the money is worth. So we will see raging inflation. That means that the purchasing power of the money will start to fail. So everybody will be they might have the same amount of money in their bank account, but they won't be able to buy as much as they used to. So it's kind of something is being taken away from them. But there's also another process that's going on, and that's the loss of millions of jobs because of digitalization. And that is also very, very dangerous, because what we're seeing now is the takeover of the world by the big digital companies like Apple and Google and Microsoft. They are actually the most powerful players in the world. They are much more powerful than any single government in the world. And they will dictate what will happen with us if this system keeps going the way it's going right now.
So is there an alternative to this system, or is there an alternative to being owned by Bill Gates?
Yeah, I think we should all think about a democratic money system, a money system in which the creation of money is organized of people and not to the benefit of a very tiny minority, which we have right now, because it's only a very tiny minority that is profiting from the way things are going right now.
Oh, I agree with that, but what would that look like? What would an actual fairer system look like? How would that manifest itself? How could we see that in action?
Yeah, for example, if money creation was taxed, and right now money creation is in the hand of the banks and the central banks, and it will remain in the hand of the central banks if they introduce central bank digital money. But that means that the central banks, which are nothing but the arm of the banking system, that they will get even more money for the bankers. What we need is a taxation on the creation of money, so that when money is created, it will benefit for example, the social system. You could put a tax on money creation and pass this money on to schools, to universities, to old people's homes. And that way you could establish a new society, a society in which it is worth living and which is not dominated by very few individuals who keep getting richer and richer.
And for those that don't know, Ernst, explain to them how does the system work now in the creation of money? How does that work?
The creation of money right now, money is being created by banks that hand out loans. If a bank hands out a loan, it creates money out of thin air. There's nothing behind it. A lot of people believe that the banks have money from people who have their accounts there, and they give this people out to other people, and then they collect interest. But that's not the way these loans are created. That is created out of thin air, and that enables banks to get richer and richer, and especially the people behind the banks, the owner of the banks. And that system should be stopped.
The Fed would probably be a great example in America, right?
I mean, everybody thinks that central banks are organizations under the control of the government, but they're actually not. They're instruments for the bankers in order to enrich themselves even more.
So what would be the solution? How can we turn back from these kind of systems?
I think we need some kind of social uprising, and I think we will get some very big social uprisings pretty soon, because the system cannot be repaired. The system, the way it is and the way it has functioned for 600 years now, is in its final stages. Money started or the banking system in Europe started about 600 years ago, and then they introduced coins. Afterwards, they introduced paper money, and then they introduced digital money. And now they're trying to introduce this digital central banking money, and that is like the last stage of this system. After that, there's nothing more, because that stage means total dictatorship of those who control the money creation system. So what I think is needed is kind of a revolution, peaceful, and I think the most important thing right now is to make people understand how this financial system works, because 99% of the people do not know how money is created. They do not know how central banks function. So what I did in my book was I tried to, the bankers and the economists, they have created their own language in order to obscure their business. And what I tried to do in my book was to translate their technical jargon into everyday language so that normal people can understand what's going on there. And I think that is very important, because you can only change things when you understand them.
But I'll ask you a question. So for an everyday person, how is it possible for them to address this oncoming tsunami, financial tsunami, and also get out of the reservation of the shackles that these bankers have created for us, because our money is with these people. So how do we extricate ourselves from the situation of having my money is in bank A, and if these people control that money, how do I actually get out of it? How do I challenge people who really got my money?
That's a good question, but that's a very difficult situation right now, because as an individual, you don't have a chance of changing the system.
No.
So it takes a lot of people to get together and understand the system in order to change it. So that's why I think it's so important to make people understand how the financial system actually works, because it takes millions of people that understand the system in order to really change it. But now, how can an individual do in this situation in order to protect themselves? Not really very much. The only thing I can tell people is that they have to be worried about a coming inflation, and it might be good to get into real assets instead of keeping your money in a bank account. And also, we all know that interest rates are going down, and saving is not really a way of accumulating more money. So it is a very difficult situation, and as an individual, there's not too much you can do about it, except that you can inform yourself in order to know what's going on, because it's always easier to get out of a situation when you know how you got there. And I think it's very important for people to know how we got into this situation. And this situation, to understand this situation, you have to know a little bit about the history of this monetary system. Our monetary system was started in 1944 in Bretton Woods. and it established the dictatorship of one currency over all other currencies, and that's the US dollar. And that dictatorship is coming to an end because the US has a big competitor now, that is China. But the big problem is that both are now trying to subdue the ordinary people and to introduce the central bank digital currency, because it's not only the US that are doing that, it's China, it's Europe, it's going on everywhere. So the only way out that I really see is to make lots of people understand how the system works. And that's one of the reasons why I wrote this book.
So do you see there being any challenge to this financial system? Would it be top down or bottom up, a challenge to this financial system? Has to come from the top, has to be some leader. Well, I mean, for instance, if Trump managed to get back in again, because it's still would he because he already challenged the Fed, didn't he?
No, I don't think that's true. I don't think that Trump is fighting the elites or something like that. I mean, Trump he put a lot of Goldman Sachs bankers and JP Morgan bankers into his team.
Yeah, I'm not sure that wasn't bad advice, to be honest with you. I'm not sure that and he's got Jared Kushner there, which is, I would remove immediately Jared Kushner. They never work with families, and especially don't work with stupid in-laws. But you know, he's chosen to do it. But I mean, if not him, Biden certainly won't do anything about the current system. He will acquiesce. You know, anything he's told, he will do. We all know that. So, what little hope it is. I mean, in Britain, we have Boris Johnson's that's just welcomed Bill Gates like he's the health minister. In Germany, I'm sure you're going to have Bill Gates come in there soon doing the very same. So are we going to fall under this new world order elitist system, or a total revolution is needed then, basically, is what you're saying, I think?
Well, actually, what we need is a total revolution of the system. I mean, I'm not dreaming of like a bloody revolution like the Russian Revolution or something, but I think that it's the most important thing is to make people understand what the real problem is. And the real problem that we're facing is that the financial system has taken over everything. We must understand that politicians are just puppets. They're just puppets of the big financial corporations and the big digital corporations. We live under the dictatorship of the digital financial complex. It used to be the military industrial complex. Nowadays, it's the digital financial complex. Like the biggest companies in the world are Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, Google, Netflix, and Facebook. And the biggest asset management corporations are BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, and Fidelity. These 9 companies, they've got the world by its throat. Their CEOs make decisions, and politicians have to accept these decisions. So like the whole COVID-19 thing looks like something that was kind of staged by them in order to find a scapegoat for their orgy of enrichment. So I don't believe that we can count on anybody at the top to help us out of this situation. So the only way I see to come out of this situation is by educating people to understand the system, and then to get up in big numbers and...
Yeah, I understand that. So what would the resistance look like? So I understand what you're saying is that it's thoroughly corrupt, it comes from the top. They're all doing, I'm all right, Jack, so they're quite happy with it. They're quite happy creating a system where there's a fiefdom, so we're the serfs, and we basically serve them and make them money and do what you're told, which is what increasingly becoming authoritative, all the governments around the world. But what would be the solution of that? Would it be non-compliance in anything they ask? I mean, how are you going to reverse the situation where the means of buying goods and services is held in the hands of just a few people? How is that reversible?
Well, I think there's an historic chance. There's a new world opening up right now because of this digitalization. Because we will see that millions of jobs will be removed and will get lost in the coming months. We will have massive numbers of unemployment, and these people are not going to be very happy about their situation. And the thing is to educate these people and tell them why they have become jobless, why their money isn't worth anything anymore. And if these people start to understand that, then they can go and demand a new system. That's the only way. That's the only way forward that I see.
And for those of us that would have no idea, what would that new system look like? So A new system without the bankers and the central banks would look like what?
I wouldn't immediately abolish the banking system, but I would regulate it. I mean, like money creation, if you create a certain amount of money, if a bank creates a certain amount of money, you could tax them on that, and you could put that money into the social sector, for example. So that would really help. Then also, there's so much to do in this world. There are so many jobs that should be created. Look at the ecological situation of the world. Look at the educational systems in Africa or in South America. I mean, there's so much to be done. And these jobs that should be taken over there, they should be paid for. And that's what this money that would be taken from the banks, from the money creation, could be used for. So I'm not dreaming of a world like an anarchist world where there's no banks anymore, no central banks, nothing. But I think that it's a matter of the distribution of wealth. Right now we have a very sick distribution of wealth, where about 99% of the wealth goes to 0.1% of the world's population, and that has to be changed. The biggest problem in the world now is social inequality, and that problem has to be solved.
Yeah, but here's the irony of that one. There's a favourite of mine, and I'm going to do a video about him, Klaus Schwab, that talks about this. This person, I can assure you, is not invested at all in any kind of equality. He's just invested in his own enrichment, his own self-aggrandizement, in making himself more powerful, in being able to throw out edicts to people when he's a totally unelected individual. And I don't see any comfort coming through these people. That 0.1% you talk of, they're going to push very hard to even strengthen their position under the guise of trying to protect you. That's what they're doing. Don't you think?
What they're doing right now, and I mean, we're seeing a lot of processes that are not very good. I mean, the militarization of society, all states are being turned into police states right now.
They are, exactly. But how do we take back all the avenues run to money? You know, unfortunately. My old dad, God rest his soul, used to say to me, you're only worth what you got in your pocket. And I used to, when I was a bit more idealistic, say that's not true. But it is true. It is true. To the world, you're worth what's in your pocket.
You always have to remember that you can only keep people as slaves as long as they don't know what's going on. As soon as people start knowing what's going on and what is actually happening behind the scenes, then they can start acting. And that's what I am striving for. I'm striving to educate people to understand.
How would it manifest itself? What would be the first step? Electing fairer governments?
Shutting down the financial system as it is, because the biggest sector in the financial system right now is derivatives. Derivatives are nothing but bets. It's a casino. It's a gambling casino, and this gambling casino has to be shut down. That's step number one. Then the laws have to be changed. Like if you inherit here in Europe, if you're very rich, you inherit a lot. If you're not that rich, you don't inherit that much. So wealth goes on from one generation to the next generation. I mean, the state has to get into that and see to it that the wealth is distributed fairly after someone passes away. I mean, there are certain steps that can be taken so that there is a redistribution of wealth for the many and not for the few.
Yeah, but so to me it sounds. It sounds like a good idea, but the point is actually getting it into practical means to make it happen. It's going to take government, obviously. It has to come from government, backed by the people, obviously. But then again, the people that put the politicians in power are the very same people we talk about, 0.1%, that are basically funding their campaigns and bribing them and giving them what they want. So it's going to take actually having actors or politicians within countries that actually love their countries and want to do good for the people, instead of enriching their own pockets, which is what we don't have at the moment, do we? I mean, we have sellouts all over the place.
No, but what we're seeing right now is the breakup of the old parties. A lot of parties over here in Europe are breaking up, and there's a chance for new parties to get into power. And but you have to understand that the system itself actually, it's the rich that profit from these systems. This system benefits the rich. So we have to have changes within the system. It's not just changing at the top of the system, not just changing politicians, but going into the system itself. And if we have political parties that put that on their agenda, then of course that might be a good idea.
And it has to be attack the big tech, because you're quite right. The big tech are affecting elections, and they're not neutral platforms. And so if you were some great new leader that came up with an ideas to basically liberate more people from this financial system, they'd close you down. They wouldn't let your message be carried beyond your mum and dad. Thanks for talking to us, Ernst. We look forward to bringing out the Financial Tsunami here in Indonesia, in Bahasa Indonesia, and also in English. We look forward to speaking to you again soon. Please follow us on Instagram, on Facebook, and on Twitter. Bye-bye, Indonesia.